Hello and welcome to the O3C End of 2023 special. Coming to you from O3C Games, my name is Jonathan Dunn and I'm joined by my friend Chris Dow.
Lem sipping and sliding away.
And we are chatting about video games.
Ooh.
First of all, thank you so much for all of you who are listening to the show and who have listened and supported the show over the last 12 months, especially as we've gone through our big old whopping transition to a monthly podcast, and your patience as we found our feet with the format for our show going forward. We are absolutely thrilled to be on our Around the World in 80 Games Odyssey now, 2 destinations in the rearview mirror, and 3 more years of content stretching out ahead of us.
Here we go.
We can do it. Be in our 40s by then.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah. That's
nice
worth
to
thinking about.
think about, isn't it?
That's worth
nice
thinking
to think about.
If you haven't already, please do sign up to our newsletter and join the O3C Discord. Links to both of those are on our website, o3c.games. Find us on social media at O3C Games on everything. Tell us what you're playing. Chat with us over the festive period, and feel free to drop us any questions or suggestions that you want to see us cover on the show in 2024.
How should we move to this bit?
So, 12 months of gaming. We've done another 12 months, Chris. 12 laps around the
Somehow.
sun. No, that's
Somehow.
not it.
No.
12 moons lapped around the Earth, as it is.
Yeah.
12.
Yeah, that's right.
12 maids are milking, and 11 swords are swooping. I can't remember.
That's close enough.
We've played a lot of games. We've played a lot of games between us. We've done a lot of hours of gaming. Chris, you try and do 32 games a year, don't you?
52.
Chris, you try and do 52 games a year, don't you?
I do, and 2023 is the 6th consecutive year that I've attempted to beat the reasonably ambitious 52 games in a calendar year. And originally that was a challenge that was tied to an online message board that I was frequenting basically because I could still access it at work. Like, it doesn't work anymore with my current school where I work now, so I can't do that in my downtime. But it was something that I used to it is something I used to check in with. And for the last couple of years, that has also spiraled out now into its own feature for O3C.games as well, onto our website, where kind of at the end of each cycle, I write a little mini review of each game that I got through, and I log how many hours it took to beat and that sort of stuff. Critical here is
12 bloods out of the vagina.
That is
Cut
true. That is true. Critical here is that what it takes to beat a game might vary. So for some, I might aim to get all the achievements or trophies. For others, it might just be to reach the credits, and that's good enough. For a live service game, not that I'm playing many of those, but if that was applicable, there might be other metrics that I'll try and use to say, okay, I've got to a full stop. I've beaten something. Now, 2023 has been significant for 2 reasons. One, it's the first year that you have joined in my footsteps to clock 52 games over the course of the year. And as you've mentioned several times, for those a bit slow with their math, that is a game a week, each week, for an entire lap of the sun.
Yeah.
And number 2...
That's a walloping rate.
And number 2, it's the first year that I have absolutely failed to hit the magic number, ending my 5-year streak. Yet.
Because at point of recording, it's the 18th of December.
That is
There's
true.
Still
that
time.
Is true.
There's
but
still time.
There is quite a gap to make up at the moment, which you'll hear about in a minute. So it might not be impossible. It could be improbable, but eagle-eyed fans of the show and eagle-eared listeners of the show will need to check the website in the new year to see the final tally. So how did you get on as the challenge newcomer, and what games exactly were you able to beat across the year of our Lord 2023?
I will tell you. I'll tell you all of them. Do you want to know that because I also kept a log of how long the games took me to complete them. Are you interested in hearing that stat?
We could do. Do you think it'd be interesting for our listeners?
Would you be interested, listeners?
Any response?
I'll see how quickly it goes. I'll see how quickly I can do it.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Go.
Would you rather hear how long it took me to complete it, or the format, or the console I played it on?
I think the format is more interesting, because some of these might be games that we've not heard of, or I don't know.
All right, fine. Some of these games are fucking massive. It's basically what I'm trying to get away with saying.
Yeah. You can always add a little caveat, say, a huge amount of time spent with.
All
Bing
right,
and
here we
bong.
go. You ready?
Yeah.
Vampire Survivors, Sonic Frontiers. Oh, I'm not even going to do the format. I'm just going to go through the list.
Okay.
All right, let's just cut all of that. How
Okay.
did you get? What did you say?
I said, how did you
How
get
did I
on as
get
the
on?
challenge newcomer? And what games
Well-
exactly were you able to vanquish across the year of our Lord 2023, Jonathan? Done.
Do you want to hear my list? Shall I just rifle it
Yeah,
off?
just reel it off. Just reel it off.
Here we
See how
go.
many we got
Here we
to.
go. Vampire Survivors, Sonic Frontiers, The King's Dungeon, Metroid
Oh.
Prime 1, Metroid Prime 2, Dead Space, Metroid Prime 3, Metroid Prime Remastered, The Callisto Protocol, Farmside, Donkey Kong Country, Hogwarts Legacy, Dead Cells, Crano Origins, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Core Fault x2, but I'm only counting that as one,
Yeah.
Gato Roboto, Forest Burns Up in Smoke, Saturday Edition, Bloom, Life's Too Short, Ratcheteer Down the Oubliette, The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, Cranky Bird, The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild Master Mode,
Oh, boy.
Rotato, Blasphemous 2, Trash Quest, Sea of Stars, Eterna Noctis, Summer Materna, Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge, Cocoon, Lies of P, Gunbrella, EA Sports FC 24, Pokemon The Teal Mask DLC, Windowsill, Super Mario Wonder, Stars of the Screen, Fae Farm, Spider-Man 2, When the Past Was Around, Dave the Diver, Dark Souls 3, and Pokemon The Indigo Disc DLC.
That's some meaty stuff in there.
It's
Like,
ridiculous, isn't it?
Knowing, obviously, we talk about this stuff each time we do a podcast, but knowing the number of hours you put into the Zelda duology, knowing the number of hours that you put
well
into
over
Vampire
300.
Survivors,
Yeah,
knowing
80.
the time that you put into, any of the smaller AAA or big games like Lies of P or Fae Farm or any of those kind of
Yeah.
moderate size releases as well. You have put the hours in.
Yeah, I did my Switch year in review, and on Switch alone, it was 701 hours.
Fucking hell, that's a long time.
It
That
is,
is a
isn't it?
seriously long time.
What about
Would you like
so
to
that's
know-
40? It's 47.
47.
47, and I've still got some stuff on the go, and I reckon I might be able to do 52 by the end of the year. So
I think you
I am
will.
going to try. I'm going to try.
I think you will. And it makes me
Yeah.
upset a little bit. It makes me happy that you've enjoyed playing games, and it makes me upset that as the rookie, you have beaten me this year because
Yeah.
I'm not close.
And
I'm
I've
not
got
close.
a kid.
Oh.
But also, I don't take my job anywhere near as seriously as you do. And also, it's significantly less important.
Well, I don't know about that. But anyway,
Somehow, pays a lot more.
that's how these things work.
Monstrously unfair.
How
Can't
these
ignore
things
that.
work.
What about you?
Would you like to hear the list?
I'd
I'm
love
gonna
to hear the list,
through it.
Chris.
Try and keep tally. How many did we play equally? No. How many games did we both play? Because it's quite limited.
Yeah, I'll keep track.
Keep it on your hands. I want to see it.
I will.
Right. The King's Dungeon. Babylon's Fall. Telltale's The Walking Dead. Michonne. Luna's Fishing Garden. Tapeworm Disco Puzzle. Nasty.
Ooh. I played that.
Oh, no, you know what I mean? You can add it if you want.
Oh, I forgot about the emojis on the screen.
Monster Jam Crush It. Alien Cats 2. Doodle World. Anguna Warriors of Virtue. Fish and Feathers. Alter Ego Dreamwalker. Canon Legend of the New Gods. Shadows of the Damned. Adulting! ! Romeo and Julie Cat. Trash
Jesus
Quest.
fuck.
Hungry Shark World. Tetris / Megatris. I counted them together because they were so short. Plants vs. Zombies. Daily Daddish. Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins DX. Vampire Survivors. Lasercat's Halloween Dead Venture. Beautiful Mystic Survivors. Cube Escape Collection, which I could have counted as about 8 different games, but I put it in one. Tetris, Full Void, XO1, Rusty Lake Hotel, Submerged, Fishing Vacation, Deep Space Waifu, Tetris 99, and Rusty Lake Roots, which was 37. A measly 37.
Yeah, that's not bad. A lot of Tetris, though, isn't it?
It is. And Tetris 99 was what I was saying at the beginning about a live service game. You can't beat that. But I have beaten all of the special cups this year to unlock all the themes. So I thought, well, that's all the new content there has been. So I added up the 25, 30 hours I played it for and said, that's your lot. You're having a completion for that as well. Are you just typing away to add Tapeworm Disco Puzzle in?
Yeah, I remember where in the list I played it as well, because it was when I was away in Denmark in February.
Yeah.
So yeah, there we go.
So you can edit that into something nice. A package that sounds good.
I mean, unfortunately for me, the latest completion, the Pokemon DLC, is without a doubt the worst stuff I've played this year.
Really?
I mean, weirdly, I still feel utterly compelled to play through them both, despite them being dreadful additions to a dreadful base game. I mean, I think I said about Scarlet and Violet, like the ambition is there, and there are like so many great ideas and genuine improvements to the core Pokemon game, but clearly Game Freak have only been given just a tiny fraction of time or budget or both to realise
just a measly window.
It's a gawping mess, and like the baffling thing certainly about this new game is that they're still introducing new mechanics that just make it just perform even worse.
Yeah,
it's like you can now freely fly around the map.
Oh, good.
And it's like, what do you think that's going to do to the frame rate and the pop-in and the horrifically ugly textures? Like, it just makes it all the more glaring. It made me think earlier, you know, the Scenic Railway, the the oldest wooden roller coaster that's at Dreamland in Margate.
Yeah,
it's like it feels like that, which is where you just feel the foundation of it. It's got no integrity. You just feel that it's like it's barely holding anything together.
Yeah.
But then it's like somebody goes, you know what? Fuck it. Let's put a loop on it. It's like I appreciate I appreciate the ambition, but
love ambition.
It's it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel safe. I mean, goodness knows what the future of that series is going to look like. I just really hope that they do take time to develop whatever's next, because even if like the Switch 2 comes out, next year, that's not going to solve the problem.
No,
because
give them some time and some money and resources.
It's the way of working that clearly needs to change, because it's a shame, because like I said, the ambition is there, the vision is there, and I do not think it's Game Freak's fault at all. It's just the fat cats, the greedy fat cats. Yeah.
If that was one of the worst things you played this year, should we talk about some good stuff? Should we wrap up the year with some positivity?
Let's do that. Let's absolutely do that. Now, obviously, neither of us are gamers who are massively champing at the bit to play the very latest releases, the big marquee AAA titles. So we're probably the worst equipped podcast to talk about the actual games of 2023.
That's right.
But there are some exceptions, and we're going to talk about some of our favourite 2023 releases. And I'm going to start in a fairly obvious place, which is with Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And
that's good, isn't it?
It's a very, very good game, and I've said so much about this game already, not just on the main podcast here, but in the spoiler specials I've been doing with Casper, covering every inch of this game. We've done 3 of those of a planned 2-parter, and we're probably not even halfway through covering what we want to with that game, and we're planning on continuing those next year as well.
I really like the idea of it being episode 3 of 2.
yeah. It was like, what was it? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a trilogy in 4 parts.
Yeah,
it was very, very, very clever.
It's good.
But I'm still baffled at how incredible the game is. It's not just that it elevates everything from Breath of the Wild to a whole new level. It's not just that it's got the most brain-bafflingly extraordinary mechanics in the game that literally makes any other sandbox game pale in comparison. It's not that they've developed the world so incredibly well, not only like thematically and narratively, but topographically, with the sky and the depths and the caves. The game still looks absolutely outstanding. It performs outstandingly well. Yeah, it's not got like flawless 60 frames per second, but none of that ever stands in the way of your experience. Like, it's the polar opposite of Pokemon in that respect, where it's just, they've clearly just taken the time, and it shows what you can achieve on such a low-powered console if given that time and the right support, and I'm sure budget. It's the best gameplay experience you can get in a game. It really is. And to top it all off, it's wrapped up in the most incredibly epic story that truly delivers on 30 years of storytelling in this series, and for the first time properly justifies the title of The Legend of Zelda. It is just extraordinary stuff. It really is. I'm so gutted that you haven't played it through to completion, so I can properly talk about it with you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I never thought I'd play through Breath of the Wild again because it was so unfathomably big to tackle. And I'll tell you why that hasn't turned out to be true in a little bit. But I really do think that Tears of the Kingdom is just too big a task to start afresh. It feels too overwhelming to start 220 hours of gaming again. But if they do a next gen upgrade for Switch 2, I'll probably play it again. If they happen to include like a master mode or something as part of that, I'll be jumping on that quicker than a pig would jump on a shit. But also, give it 5 years, I'm going to want to play it again.
Yeah. I didn't
Let's just pause there a second. I need to get a drink.
That's all right.
So I'm going to start kerfluffing otherwise.
That's all right.
I played football yesterday, and I've massively, you probably can't see it, but I've like massively bruised this finger.
Oh, it does look swollen on your knuckle, actually.
And this hasn't even come up in a bruise yet, but it feels worse all down here. And it means that just everything is quite difficult to do. You use your fingers a lot, don't you?
Yeah, it has been said. Fingers quite important.
What 2023 stuff have you played?
Well, I didn't finish Zelda. I played it. I can echo that it's very good, but I did not finish it. A game that was cool, Super Mario Wonder.
Oh yeah, great game.
And we all knew it would be good because it's a Mario game, and you kind of make certain assumptions, but it wasn't guaranteed, I think, to be this good. And we've talked back and forth. The new Super Mario Brothers games are a really good time. A great time, in fact, you could say.
Yeah.
But New Super Mario Brothers U in particular, it's a very tip-top tier platform, one of the very best. But when viewed alongside something as exotic and exciting as Mario Galaxy or Odyssey, for me, the new series has always felt a bit vanilla. It's doing probably the best example of the archetypal run and jump game. You know, the image that you would see in a visual dictionary alongside a platformer. But it's just a bit safe when kind of viewed alongside something a bit more madcap like 3D Land or 3D World or any of those titles. So how nice then for me, for Wonder to somehow have been able to extrapolate all the joy and surreal nonsense of the 3D Mario games, but retain the purity and the readability of the 2D titles amidst all the excitement. Because every game in the new series has always felt great to play, but visually it's where they just feel maybe a bit plain sometimes. Whereas Wonder is just as pleasingly malleable and springy and elastic in the hand as the new games have always been, but now with visuals that I think much better match the explosive creativity that's long been on show in all the 3D titles. And it's just really beautiful. Like, back in the 360 and PS3 era, there felt a very real possibility that properly exciting, family-friendly, bright and colourful games might be sidelined kind of forever for the beige and brown corridors of like Gears of War and Killzone and Resistance. And in my 20s, I'll be really honest and say that given that projection, I just kind of shrugged. It was a real sort of like, oh, you know, I'm all right, Jack. I'm not fussed because I'm an adult now, and I'm happy that games are growing up because it's a medium that has to get older and grow up. But in my late 30s, I'm now so happy that there's still a place for Nintendo's properly kaleidoscopic worlds. It's just such a treat. And you definitely have that kind of curve in your life where it's like, as a child, you want bright and colourful. Then you have a little period where you're like, guns and swearing is where it's at. Love swearing and guns. And then you come out the other side and you're like, actually, that's
like a real man.
Pretty shit, isn't it? And then you realise that no, fun is probably what you want to be doing with your free time. And Mario always provides that. And Wonder is wonderful.
It is. I'm going to talk about just a little handful of indie games in this little bracket here, because we've had some really lovely ones this year. We've also had the usual cavalcade of crap on the Nintendo eShop, giving us thousands of new pages of dross to sift through. But like, I think this year has probably had like, I don't know, the indie game releases feel very high profile. I mean, I know that we're sort of in an era now where indie game isn't so much a qualifier as it is a genre.
Yeah.
Because indie game studios and stuff have got huge budgets and they've often got backings of larger corporations or larger studios, but these games are still being made by small teams.
Yeah.
But they're given the sort of the big prestige advertising campaigns that you would see something like Mario get. Sea of Stars is one of those games which seemed to be all anyone was talking about for months leading up to it. The hype was huge. Like I've never seen hype like it for an indie game, to be honest, and rightly so, because it's the long-awaited new game from Sabotage Studios, who made the incredibly brilliant The Messenger, a game whose praises I've sung many times before.
Yes, you have.
Oh, no. Hang on 1 second. Sea of Stars, this new game, it was teased as being set in the same universe as The Messenger, but it wasn't to be another action platformer, Metroidvania like The Messenger. Instead, it was going to be a classic JRPG style adventure in the vein of something like Chrono Trigger, being its closest comparison, and quite a deliberate comparison point as well, because Sabotage, they lent pretty fully into that, not only by having party-based combat and pixel art graphics, but it also has the time traveling mechanics. It even shares the legendary composer from Chrono Trigger chipping in some tunes on the Sea of Stars soundtrack alongside Rainbow Dragon Eyes, who did the phenomenal soundtrack to The Messenger. Like, everything this game does, none of it feels massively original. Like, it doesn't reinvent the wheel. It doesn't really do anything new. Although the overworld is refreshingly different to your usual JRPG setup. It's really active, seeing you be able to combine platforming and traversal mechanics to make it more interesting. And the battles all take place on the overworld, with the enemies visible to you, rather than the more typical JRPG, random encounter setup, which means your adventuring happens at just an incredibly slick rate, which I really, really loved.
Yeah.
Especially because I went on to play Octopath Traveler 2 straight after it, because I sort of had the the JRPG bug. And Octopath Traveler 2, which is very much your classic JRPG fare, just felt quite sedentary by comparison, because it was very stop-start. It was sort of long, lengthy cutscenes, and it was very, very good, but also, it wasn't as engaging for me, having just played Sea of Stars.
Just not as brisk.
It's certainly not as brisk.
Yeah.
And, I mean, one of the things that Sea of Stars does do to sort of make it stand apart from, its sort of very fairly obvious comparison points is its phenomenal writing. It's something that was expected, because the writing in The Messenger was amazing. It was incredibly well written. It was very witty. It had fantastic plot twists. It was very subversive, and the characters here in Sea of Stars, fantastic. Dialogue is witty and whimsical. The overall story has got some amazing emotional gut punches. It made me cry. It's got plot twists. The way it sort of subtly ties into the larger world of The Messenger is also really, really nice. It's very, very subtle, but it does. But they have now teased that the DLC for the game that's coming out next year is going to be sort of pulling on that thread a lot more to sort of weave it more into the world of The Messenger.
Yeah.
All in all, it's absolutely brilliant. You won't find a better sort of classic JRPG setup. You'll find ones that are equally as good, but this really, it's yes, it's a bit stereotypical, but when it's this quality, it becomes more of the archetype than the stereotype.
Yeah.
Continuing on about indie games, we've had a real treat in the last couple of months, me and Chris, because the first 2 destinations on our Around the World in 80 Games Odyssey saw us take 2 of the best indie games of the year for a spin. Denmark gave us Cocoon, the latest game from one of the lead developers of Limbo and Inside. Cocoon is a significantly less macabre affair, but is equally as beautiful in its clarity of design and the sheer brilliance of the execution of its puzzle mechanics, seeing you have to keep track of literal worlds within worlds within worlds within worlds. It's absolutely stunning. It's available to play on pretty much all platforms, and it's well worth your time if you like your puzzle games with just a real twist and just stuff that you just wouldn't expect. It's staggering. And last month's destination, South Korea, gave us Dave the Diver, a game that I was gagging to play as soon as I clapped eyes on it earlier in the year. And I was thrilled that it came to the eShop in perfect time to play it for the podcast. As with Cocoon, you don't have to trawl that far back through your podcast feed to listen to our full thoughts on these games.
Last episode.
Last episode, literally just... Dave the Diver is really brilliant. It combines great hunting and like survival mechanics for its deep sea diving sections, and it's got fast-paced, overcooked style mechanics for its restaurant running section, mixed in with brilliantly witty dialogue, so many great characters, and just the most amazing amount of mechanics in there. It's just, even after rolling the credits and putting 20 or so hours into the game, I was still unlocking whole new areas of the game to play and just whole new things. Like I thought I'd wrapped it up, and then I'd be like, oh look, here's a Tamagotchi game to play in amongst it. Oh, and here's a farm, here's a fish farm, here's this, here's that. It's just like here's seahorse racing. It's just everything, everything, and every inch of it is a joy to play. And they've just released, point of recording last week, a free piece of DLC, which is a lovely crossover with the fellow indie fish 'em up Dredge, which is also on my list of games to play.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I plan on diving literally straight into Dave the Diver to try this out. Now that I've knocked the indigo disc on its head and it's lying in a fucking pokey grave.
In the bin.
Yeah. But
in
still,
the mud.
3 absolute top tier indie games this year. Fantastic. What else, Chris?
Something totally different. Takes us right back to the beginning of the year, I think February time. Fiat Rhythm Final Bar Line. Dumb name aside, is just a really good rhythm game. And if you like rhythm games like me, it's a really good time. Like, I make the joke every time it comes up, but it's not a lie that this is my favourite Final Fantasy game.
Yeah.
with Chocobo GP a close second.
Yeah, of course.
When Final Bar Line launched, I was a bit concerned at first how it would feel, given that the first 2 entries were on the 3DS and they used the resistive touchscreen to tap inputs. But I needn't have worried, because the button and analog controls are arguably probably providing more precision once you're used to the setup. So as soon as you're used to it, it plays really nicely. There is so much music in this game that it is obscene. You know, there was a small window back at the start of the year when I thought, for some reason, I might aim to beat everything in the game. But I very quickly realised that this was like a fool's errand, you know, proper fucking clown car thinking. Because the content here is just so ridiculously plentiful. It would have meant that my completed games tally was even more paltry than it ended up being.
Yeah.
You know, this is the type of game I could have got to the credits. I could have beaten the main story of Fiat Rhythm. But because in my head I was like, well, I'm gonna get the highest rank on every single song. I just like ground away at the same chunk to begin with. And then once I sort of got bored 30 or 40 hours in, it's like, oh, I'm never going to finish that, am I? But anyway, it's great. It's great. Props to Square Enix as well for the post-launch support too. You know, it's had regular DLC drops. I paid into ahead of time. Like, I basically pre-ordered the Super Deluxe Mega Edition on the eShop, so it would just appear on my console when it was released. And it's meant that across the year, I've just reaped the rewards endlessly. And those drops have only recently finished. I think they are done now. But the final song list is like over 500. And on top of the constant trickling of new songs to tap along to, it's also had nice quality of life updates and patches, which meant that the game has been tweaked and refined to ensure that it's as robust in mechanics and back end as it is in setlist. You know, for a lesser known Final Fantasy offshoot that not that many people care about, for being totally honest, it's great to see this level of commitment to the game's diehard fans and community. And it's all the little things, like at launch, for example, the game had a few latency adjustments that you could do in-game to kind of fit modern flat-screen TVs. But if you had a TV that was particularly old and had like a not very good audio response, there was a limit to how far you could kind of balance that problem. And after a month or two, they were like, oh, we fixed that now. We'll just give you more little tweaks and tools to make it work for you. And all that sort of stuff just means that anyone can play and enjoy a game. So for me, it meant that I went from playing it just on the handheld, because I wanted to know that any mess-ups were my own, to then being able to play on the TV as well and not having that problem. I really love how this whole series makes songs feel like a proper quest or adventure. Yeah. And you've always got like a little team of 4 characters from a whole range of Final Fantasy games. You're equipping them with a variety of skills or passive upgrades. And then as you are fighting through each song, you've got your little pals kind of having a little Barney at the bottom with a variety of Final Fantasy mobs and enemies underneath the note charts. And it's a really small addition. You know, it's really no more than Guitar Hero having a little band play behind the note highway. but it makes the game feel far closer to an RPG than it has any right to. And I think it's really captured something of the Final Fantasy spirit, even though this is just a totally different genre that it's built around. Music's great. Everything about it's great. It's just a really, really solid rhythm game for music game fans and Final Fantasy heads alike. Just top stuff.
Ooh. You love a bit of barring your final theats.
Love it.
Another little bracket of games that I just want to quickly cover from this year is remakes and remasters.
Yes.
Obviously, given the technical opportunities offered by the latest hardware generations, it's not surprising that so many developers are revisiting older games to give them very shiny, ray-traced coats of paint, or using it as an opportunity to build an older game again from scratch and realise it in more modern detail. I find it difficult to justify these games in like Game of the Year conversations, even though they may be some of the best games I've played this year.
Yeah.
And 2023 gave me, personally, 3 of those. Firstly, Dead Space, which is a remake of the original Dead Space game. And
Yeah?
I don't know if this was like a from the ground up remake or not, but, because it feels exactly the same to play it. But it does look jaw-droppingly good on the PS5 with all of the dark and spooky corners of this tragic spacecraft just rendered in immaculately gory, terrifying detail. It was a great time to begin with, and they haven't had to tighten the game up much, to be honest, because of its clarity of vision and like the execution of that when it was first made. It holds up incredibly well, and yeah, it was a great experience. The asking price of 70 quid felt a bit steep for that, because but then, I clocked it over the weekend it came out and traded it back in, made a decent amount back. So
Win-win.
but in a testament to how good the game and the concept is, I immediately bought a copy of the Callisto Protocol, which is the latest game by the lead developer on Dead Space, and it is essentially a Dead Space sequel in all but name, to be honest. But that game felt exactly the same to play as well. It's certainly not reinventing the wheel in terms of survival horror gaming, but also showing that the formula still works very, very well, and space can be very spooky. Very, very spooky. Speaking of such things, the Resident Evil 4 remake was also a real highlight of the year.
Yeah.
The original game holds up, like mechanically, if not thematically, very well, because it does have some truly awful dialogue and narrative choices, and its representation of women is horrible. And it was honestly, literally sinful. And it's one of the many areas of the game that has been addressed. Fortunately, they have taken a "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" approach to the game, because the core game was already brilliant. It was brilliantly tight and enjoyable on both like a mechanical front and also just in the core design of the game and the way it works and the level design and the weapons and all of that stuff. Having said that, this game has been rebuilt from the ground up, but in the same way that Resident Evil 2 and 3 were before it. And fortunately, that engine is absolutely superb. It plays like the evolution of Resident Evil 4 that we didn't get with 5 and 6. And of course, they've sloshed the most incredibly brilliant paint job on everything, making sure this game looks just $1 million in every single frame. Just as when I replayed Resident Evil 4 on the Switch a few years ago, and when I revisited it in VR on the Meta Quest, the game always delivers an outstanding experience. It is truly one of the best games ever made, and now, it's even better thanks to some, nice quality of life upgrades, core improvements, and modernization of the controls, and obviously the incredible new graphics. It's amazing. It really is. It really is amazing. But yeah, like I said, it's difficult to say it's a game of the year because it was the game of 20 years ago. But speaking of making a masterpiece even better, I didn't think it could be done, but somehow Metroid Prime has been made even better on the Nintendo Switch with Metroid Prime Remastered. And like an HD trilogy pack of Metroid Prime 1, 2, and 3 has been bandied about the chat rooms literally even before the Switch was a thing.
It's
Back when
ridiculous,
Wind
isn't it?
Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD were out, saying, "Oh yeah, we'll get a Metro Prime trilogy HD," but even in my wildest dreams, I wasn't expecting what we got. Like, I was expecting a fairly bare bones porting job with some HD textures and some modern control improvements, much like the Prime Hack emulation ports that I played through on the Steam Deck this year. I played through all 3 games and had a great time because they're good games, especially the first one. And the textures were upgraded with HD textures and, you know, dual stick controls implemented. And thankfully, we see a if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach to the core of this game as well. Because the core game is absolutely spectacular. But what we did get is the most staggeringly beautiful paint job that made my jaw drop quite fully. Like, I couldn't believe it when I saw the reveal trailer. Honestly, it looked like one of those things where it's like, oh, Sonic looks amazing in the Unreal 5 engine, or that sort of thing. But I was doubly amazed when I got the game in my hands, which I think was actually later that day because it dropped on the eShop like immediately.
Yeah, the shadow drops, they love them.
And it is, without a doubt, the best looking game on the Switch. And the core game is still one of the greatest games ever made. It is a mind-blowing experience. It is incredible. I really, really hope they follow suit and do a remaster of 2 and 3, but honestly, this is the one I really cared about, and I couldn't be happier with it. It's, again, it could easily be Game of the Year, same as Resident Evil 4, if it weren't for the fact that, you know, it's the game for 20 years ago.
Of the early 2000s.
Yeah, but still, what incredible games, like, that they hold up that well with just a few tweaks of modernization, you know, amazing stuff, really amazing stuff.
Keeping with the theme of remakes, I got one more for you that I think is worth mentioning for the year. This was a game that originally was due to be released in 2022 and then slipped by a full year because it was Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp.
Oh, yes, they had to wait until war wasn't bad anymore.
They had to wait until there was no war, which luckily, April of this year, all done. All done.
All done. Absolutely fine.
When it was originally announced, I was really into it because I really liked Advance Wars. When I was growing up, I had the first game on the SP, my little Game Boy Advance SP. And sadly, though, being truly honest, when it got pushed back, I just forgot it existed for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, I had my pre-order still. When it finally dropped through my letterbox, like a good year or so late, I just couldn't even get the oomph to play it. But I thought it was worth mentioning because it is a big ground-up remake, and I'm sure it's really good. The originals were fantastic. I've got, like I said, really fond memories of playing the first game, the old clamshell SP, with that lovely flush D-pad and nice clicky buttons. And it's essentially like Fire Emblem, but with less bump and romance and permadeath. So it's a bit more quick and breezy. But for whatever reason, I just couldn't muster the oomph to give this one a play in April of this year. It's on the shelf. We've got a few weeks left of the year. Maybe I'll play it. Maybe I'll give a few maps a blast just so I can say, oh, yeah, it's all right. But I can't help but feel that if it had kept to its original date, I probably would have been far more likely to play it because I was excited. I was kind of anticipating it coming out. I wanted to give it a go, and it just fell off my radar, really. This year, when it arrived, I was back at school, I think, after my Easter break and trying to muster the energy to guide my first Year 11 cohort at my current school through their art GCSE and also find time to play Advance Wars just wasn't really happening around that sort of time. Like, it's not a slight on the game, it's not a slight on Nintendo or WayForward, who did the tarting up and modernising job. It's just a victim of personal circumstance, which does happen. You know, these days, the windows I have for getting into deeper games just shrinks week on week throughout the school year. And sadly, Advance Wars has remained in what I'll call it cellophane prison since April. But I'm sure it's good. If you played it, tell us it's good, because I reckon it was. So I thought I'd just put it out for your consideration anyway.
So typically, most of our playtime this year was confined to games that were not released in 2023. They may have been new to us in 2023, or they may be games that we just revisited again for a fresh 2023 playthrough, as it was in my case when I immediately started a fresh playthrough of Breath of the Wild following my 220 odd hours in Tears of the Kingdom.
Absolute madman.
Clearly 220 hours wasn't enough for me. I wanted more, and more I had. And the really nice thing was that it allowed me to play Breath of the Wild in master mode for the first time. I'd poured over every inch of the DLC when it was released in the succeeding months following Breath of the Wild's original release, but the one thing I wasn't prepared to do at that point was play an entirely new, fresh playthrough of the game, having spent hundreds of hours completing it.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't really consider what a playthrough in master mode would really be like. Oh, God. Pip burped at me earlier. She looked at me and she went, it was hilarious. I knew it would be harder, sure, but beyond that, I didn't really see the appeal of doing it. It's something that began to, like, I don't know, just percolate in my brain as I reached the end of my time with Tears of the Kingdom. And almost in reaction to the endless creative possibilities in that game, I started to think of the appeal of... It's ridiculous calling Breath of the Wild this, but think of the appeal of a smaller, stripped-down Zelda affair.
A limited tool set.
Yeah. And, like, the idea of returning to the Hyrule of Breath of the Wild with its still enormous world existing on just one more manageable plane, and its more basic abilities, with only probably about 1 billion creative possibilities as opposed to the trillions in Tears of the Kingdom. It all started seeming quite enticing, and the idea of taking on Master Mode with its vastly increased difficulty started to feel very attractive, because I knew that I would have to take the game at a much different pace, probably a much more slower pace, really carefully considering all of the different moments with quiet, strategic patience. And as soon as I started playing it, I knew I was in it for the long haul again, because it's phenomenal just how much it changes the way you play the game. And like the tension generated by these new power dynamics is palpable. Like it never goes away either, because the challenges ramp up as you go, and then you can take on the DLC content in Master Mode, which was already a hefty challenge, but now was, I mean, almost insurmountable, especially the Trial of the Sword survival challenge, which sees you stripped of all your weapons and your armor and your items and your abilities, and you just have to play through increasingly challenging floors of enemies without dying at any point, or you reset and start again. It took a lot of perseverance, but I did eventually make it through, powering up my Master Sword to its full power, and using that power to plow through the other DLC, the Champion Ballad, which was still no mean feat. And then I unlocked the Master Cycle, the motorbike that allows you to ride around Hyrule with incredible speed and fury. And the entire adventure just took on a whole new life of its own, like quite different to what I experienced in my first playthrough of Breath of the Wild, also very, very different to what I played through in Tears of the Kingdom. And it was just a fucking incredible time. Like I said on the pod back when I was playing it, but to anyone who thought that just because Tears of the Kingdom builds, iterates, and improves on nearly every aspect of Breath of the Wild, that Breath of the Wild is somehow now a redundant game, you could not be more mistaken. Yes, I mean, Tears of the Kingdom is a better game, but Breath of the Wild offers a significantly different experience that still makes it very, very worth your time. Like, I put 95 hours into it. I beat all the shrines and all the DLC. There's only a handful of the shrines that are a bit of a pain, which are the ones that you have to use the gyroscope for, because let's not forget, this was a Switch launch title, and it was still sort of, showing off some of the technical capabilities of the console, but everything else in the game was absolutely incredible. And I think to top it all off, like, it really says a lot that I've sort of bookended. I mean, because we're on the verge of a Switch 2. There's not going to be many more big games I'm going to be playing on the Switch likely to come now. And bookending, my Switch playtime with Breath of the Wild, first game I played, and one of the last games I will have played. It's amazing to look at what gaming happened in between then, because I discovered Dark Souls in that time, and played through all of those, Bloodborne, Sekiro, Elden Ring. Like, that's what's defining me as a gamer now. And the fact that I got to revisit Breath of the Wild, almost play it like a Souls-like, I just think is an incredible testament to the game and, its malleability and its legacy. It's incredible. Thank you. What old games did you play, old man?
I'm an old man, and I did play some old games. I want to talk about a game called XO1. It is a game that I picked up in the semi-recent Steam sale, like a month or so back, after having had it sat on my wish list for a decent chunk of time. And when I finally sat down to actually play it, it was a proper, oh my goodness, sort of afternoon, evening. Like, I remember way back seeing some sort of little videos on Twitter, I think, of the game Spacecraft kind of skipping over some sand dunes and thinking, oh, yeah, that looks quite fun. And I put it on my wish list then, and then just kind of forgot about it. You know, my Steam wish list is humongous. Anytime I see an interesting thing, it's like, oh, it'll probably be cheap one day. So it all just goes on in this pile of thousands of games. But when I did see it again, I was like, oh, I'll give it a proper go. And a few weekends back, I booted it up on the deck. I sat back and was just genuinely blown away by my first playthrough in a way I haven't been with a game for a long time. Like, it's been a while since I could honestly describe a game as being awe-inspiring. And I've played games that I've loved. I've played games that I've been properly addicted to. Another old one I'll mention soon. But they didn't make me feel like XO1 did. And the elevator pitch, if you need to be sold on this game, if you liked the overall vibe of Journey or Abzu, if you liked the storytelling of something like The Outer Worlds, if you liked the more quiet kind of exploratory moments of No Man's Sky, if you liked the traversal of Insomniac Spider-Man games or the flow state you get with a good Tony Hawk's run, or even the imagery and light work of VR games like Thumper or Tetris Effect, you will be all over this. Like, it's unreal. You navigate a strange spacecraft through a series of semi-procedural alien landscapes. You're unraveling a narrative that surrounds alien communication and human purpose and perseverance and regret, like all big, heavy stuff. But the main thing you're doing is just mastering an incredibly simple physics-based movement system that has you either increasing gravity down slopes to gain speed in your little craft, or reducing gravity to launch off peaks and over valleys, like an alien version of the old iOS game Tiny Wings. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. No, and I thought exactly that. Yeah.
Like, XO1, the whole game takes about 3 or so hours for a full playthrough, and I did the whole thing in one sitting, mouth agape, audibly gasping and basically slapping my cheeks every few minutes. I haven't used this term in quite a long time, but this is a patented Cristal sense of place game with every single stage feeling like its own character. Some are welcoming, some are desolate, some are murky and oppressive, some are claustrophobic, some are freeing. A few stages in, you reach a water level which just blew my head off, like Doom shotgun style. Like, just didn't know what to do. Your craft is like skimming over the surface of the water like a stone that's being shot across the ocean at ultrasonic speed, which in and of itself is an experience reminiscent of like proper childhood joy of being at the beach with your dad and skimming stones and everything else. But within that same stage, you're also able to sink seemingly endlessly into the sea until your vision is so obscured by the weight of the water that it feels like you can't breathe. And then when it gets too much, you can disengage the craft's gravity drive and use your momentum to shoot out of the water miles up into the sky, up over the clouds. It's just such a cavalcade of emotions. And as the stage progresses, you've got comets and space debris raining down onto the surface of the water. You're ramping off the splashes back up and into the sky and the clouds. It's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. The sound design is bananas. Like, I was reminded most of the audio design in Jordan Peele's Nope, as your craft is like tearing across the landscape. But it's like the ambient weather sounds, and it's got subtle kind of post-rock soundtrack in the background that makes this just the full package. The visuals are quite simple, but deploy post-processing so well that the atmosphere is just like chef's kiss stuff. It is amazing. What this game does, to me at least, I think is the polar opposite of Tetris Effect. And that's in a good way, because you want a range of experiences. But whenever I stick Tetris on in VR, on a handheld, on the big screen, the combo of music and visuals and Tetris gameplay makes me feel a sort of utopian hope. You know, the game's message of Tetris Effect seems to come from the early 2000s when internet connectivity could only seem like a net good. And those immortal lines from the first stage, it's all connected, it speaks to this like collective human consciousness, which makes something like Tetris so immediately recognizable to the majority of the world's populace. We're all somewhere, someplace, elsewhere, all unique, but we share enough that if you shout loud enough, there's always going to be someone who will shout back. And that's what Tetris makes me feel like, that it's like something that we all have some connection to, and therefore there's always someone to kind of pick you up and make sure you're okay. XO1, on the other hand, though, seems to revel in presenting occasionally similar imagery to that of Tetris. So you've got like celestial outcrops or ocean expanses, but with a core message of just outright isolation. And the possibility of connection does exist in this world because it's basically driving the whole narrative, but it relies on total leaps of faith, of latching onto kind of the distant tendrils of whispered messages. And in Tetris Effect, your efforts feel gargantuan. You're the star of the show. You're conducting these light shows around you with careful play. But in XO1, you're reminded time and time again that you are just a speck on the surface of these vast planets, and they are the focus, not you. You know, the landscapes are permanent, but you're just a temporary little blip that is skimming along until you're not. Like, I won't spoil anything else, but if you've got a half-decent PC, if you've got a Steam Deck, which is where I played it, if you've got an Xbox, just go and play it. It's been due to come to the PlayStation for 2 years now and hasn't materialised, so it could be that that's just not going to happen. But I really want to recommend this game very, very highly. And we won't have time to do it today because this episode is going to be 12 years long, but I want to propose we do like a top 100 update episode at some point next year.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah.
Easter time.
Yeah.
Because XO1 is absolutely on there for me.
For Jesus,
it's got to have a place. Yeah. It's got to be on there somewhere.
And speaking of which, a game that would definitely be on my top 100 list, extraordinarily high up, is probably my biggest gaming highlight of 2023 outside of Tears of the Kingdom, and that was Eterna Noctis.
Oh, you like that one?
An indie Metroidvania Souls-like. It was made for me. It was originally released in December 2021. I'm really glad that I didn't play it then when it was first released, because apparently it released with a fair few bugs and performance issues. But I had the absolute joy of playing it in what feels like its final form, which it performs beautifully, perfectly. Like, you never know that there are any issues with it. And it blew me away to the point of bafflement. Like, I was told it was a great Metroidvania that rivaled Hollow Knight for 2D combat and platforming, but that I knew that would be hyperbole, but it wasn't. And this raises the bar for all Metroidvanias for me. It's one of the most challenging games I've ever played, but also it's one of the most readable and rewarding. It's never frustrating. It's never frustrating. It's never frustrating. It is often maddening, but that was only in my own annoyance at my lack of ability. But honestly, like, the payoffs you get. The payoffs you get, not just in terms of like the rewards and the upgrades that allow you to develop and level up and build your character to make your traversal and combat more fluid and enjoyable. Yeah, that's great for getting that stuff when you beat something incredibly hard. But the sheer level of satisfaction you get is second to none. Like, it's got incredible art style. It's got this amazing aesthetic design. The music is phenomenal. The platforming is better than any other platforming game I've played. The combat is better than any other 2D game I've played. The game is fucking huge. Every time I thought I was in like an end game zone, something else would come along and supersede it. Every area has got intrigue and challenge. It really sort of teased your sense of adventure. I just couldn't believe what I was playing, like, because no one else, it seemed, aside from me and Casper, seemed to be. Haven't even heard of it, or let alone were playing it, or preaching of its mastery of the genre and the medium. Like, I just can't believe that no one's playing it. That not everyone's talking about it. It deserves to be talked about in the same breath as Hollow Knight and Ori and the Blind Forest and all of the best Metroidvanias. And yeah, like, I just can't recommend it highly enough. Do not play the Switch version. That's it. The PS5 version is where I played it, because I started it on the Steam Deck, but I felt like I wanted to play it just a bit bigger. But now with the OLED screen on the Steam Deck and the new analog sticks on the OLED deck, which I find to be a lot better than what they were in the first. I don't know if they have been improved. Maybe that's just because mine have been nibbled a little bit by my dog.
I think so.
Maybe, but I'm very, very tempted to do a second playthrough on the Steam Deck now, because it's made for the OLED. It's stunning. Oh, what a game!
Oh, what a game! Oh, this next one. Between us, we've probably spoken for 2 or 3 hours each about this game, so I'm not going to bore anyone here by rehashing the same thing again. Vampire Survivors is a 10 out of 10 game.
Yeah.
And it's quite literally spawned an entire subgenre since its release back in 2022. The PC original is great. The console versions are great. The Switch version is mind-blowing achievement that it's even running. The mobile version is great. It's still getting massive updates and DLC packs almost monthly. I'm currently stockpiling content so I can have a massive binge in the new year when school begins to ramp up again. And I need a salve for my brain, because that's really what it was offering back when I was playing this regularly. There was a winter update recently with new characters, items, and stages. There was an adventures update that changes the core focus of each run to be more mission-based. There's just been an Among Us crossover for some reason, for better or worse, that again adds more and more to do. It is a game that costs pennies but will reward you endlessly. Like a genuine all-timer. It is absolutely on my list. And that's it. Playdate.
Yeah. Should we talk about the Playdate?
Oh, the plucky little handheld. We love it.
Yeah. We finished our coverage of the first season of the Playdate games and were wondering where it left us with the little yellow console. Where would it fit into our lives and our gaming activity now going forward? The wonderful answer is anywhere and everywhere. And now the wonderful little thing boasts a library of over 100 games available just on the device alone through the brilliant implementation of the catalogue. And there's hundreds of games now available independently through itch.io that can be very quickly and easily sideloaded to. And yeah, we just wanted to chat a little bit about some of the best catalogue games that are now available on Playdate and the ones we've enjoyed most this year. And Core Fault is the game that captured my imagination at the beginning of the year, thanks to the brilliant developer diaries that the developer Squid God made. He definitely chronicles the highs and lows of the development of each of his games, giving you a rare insight into the inner workings of what it really takes to bring a game to completion. It turns out the real challenge isn't writing good characters, coming up with cool mechanics, or even making a great title screen. It's just getting ladders to work. That's ladders there aren't in Core Fault, but what there is at the centre is an ambition to essentially make Vampire Survivors on the Playdate.
Yeah.
Do they manage to do it? Yes. But with the help of fellow developer Dave Makes of Mixolumia fame, together they create exactly what they set out to do. But finding out all of the hurdles they had to overcome in bringing their vision to reality really makes you appreciate what they've done to a really huge amount. The game is really good fun, although my second playthrough did highlight some of the weaknesses in the game's overall balance. But that satisfying gameplay loop that Vampire Survivors does so well is very, very present here and is concentrated into like a bite-sized experience that still gives you that dopamine drip feed. And it's just really, really good fun. And I'd love to see a sequel at some point. Like, it feels now that developers are really starting to just eke out the potential of the Playdate. Like, some of the games that are coming out now are just technically just ridiculous. Getting the Playdate to do what it's doing. And I would really love to see Squid God and Dave Makes return to Core Fault. And maybe, I don't know what these tricks are that people are doing to make things like essentially make Rocket League on the Playdate. But I'm sure they do. I'm sure they know what they are, and they could implement some of these things and start to sort of unlock the true power of the Playdate. And Core Fault 2 could utilize some of those brilliantly and make something even bigger and better. But yeah, it's a very, very good game. I definitely recommend it. And also P Racing, that game that I alluded to there, is a very good game available on the catalogue. Not just a full 3D racing game that also has Rocket League in it. Why not?
It's got like an open world mission mode as well. It's just
like Driver.
Stupid game. It's really good. I really love the Playdate. When season 1 wound down, when we finished talking about all those games on the podcast for our own season, we were kind of thinking out loud as to what games would come next from the console's ragtag bag of indie developers. And as much as I thought I wanted more big stuff like Saturday Edition, it's become more and more clear that mostly I was just desperate for games like the two I'm going to mention today that could be pocket mainstays for train trips for the foreseeable future. And the first one I want to talk about, we've mentioned quite a few times across our newsletter, across episodes, is Medial. It is a brilliant logic puzzle. You get a 5x5 grid. In each row, you're trying to fit a triangle, a circle, and a square. No line, either horizontally or vertically, can include two of the same shape, and that is it. And yet, in 100 or so stages that I have played through, the game has never become stale, and there are hundreds more to play through. But the way it uses hints feels really, really fresh, because instead of just saying a kind of a number system like Picross uses, it uses these medial clues, which will tell you which shape ought to sit in the middle of the three in any particular line. And having that information coupled with a few other symbols that let you know where shapes must or must not be, it seems to be able to produce near limitless variations of puzzle. Some that are really tough, that you have to really, really work at and kind of cancel things out in your head. Some that are a bit more breezy and easy to kind of work out. But it is as good as any logic puzzle I've played. And it's let down only the slightest bit by a tiny lack of polish. It's not on the catalogue yet, but it is on itch.io. It's a few dollars. It's probably going to be on sale over Christmas as well. If you have a Playdate, please check it out. It's a big, big recommendation, I know, from both of us. It's a good time.
Very, very good game. Very, very good game. Another Playdate game I really enjoyed is a real little oddity of a game that I absolutely loved, mostly for just how strange and obtuse its sense of humour was, and that is a game called Stars of the Screen.
Oh, I've not played it yet.
And it's essentially, I guess, it's very difficult to sort of describe. I guess I'd say it was a puzzle sandbox game.
Yeah.
Based around the classic PC screensavers of the 90s. Hence the Stars of the Screen screensaver. How exactly does it sort of do this? Don't know, really. It's so difficult to explain. Like, you'll be spawned into essentially a screensaver, and pressing a button or turning the crank will cause it to do something, maybe. But you just need to play around and manipulate it a little bit to get it to reach a point where it will then, I don't know, like, peak. And then you'll transition to another screensaver. But it's the way the game really subverts itself that made me smile the most. There's always a way to interact with it, like even in the menus or in the transitions, or when you think you're doing something else, it's really doing something different. There's always seems to be like some other secret to wheedle out. There's probably a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't find, but I just really enjoyed seeing what would come next or seeing what would happen if I did this. And so many times I'd be rewarded. It's like, for me, it's the ultimate toilet game. It allows you to sort of reach a very sort of zoned out hypnotic state whilst you allow your body to do whatever it is it needs to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really recommend it. It's been a real joy of a little game that I found. And it's it just couldn't exist anywhere else other than the Playdate. It's brilliant.
Following on from Medial is a game that is so polished it may as well have a diamond sheen, because Sparrow Solitaire is my pick for Playdate Game of the Year, I think. And if my timeline is correct, it's probably the game I played most when I ought to have been unwrapping and starting Advance Wars that I mentioned earlier. It's Mahjong, but it's the most beautiful Mahjong you've ever seen. And when I uploaded some footage of it to TikTok, someone sarcastically commented, "I'm not spending $200 to play Mahjong," but for me, probably would have been worth it.
Yeah.
Like, when we were focusing on the Playdate Weekly, I feel like we were always looking for every pair of games to do something to kind of stand out, to make their mark or carve their niche. But the games I've spent probably the ensuing time curating on my device have been games like Quandino, which is a recent Tetris game that's overtaken Rain Blocks as the best on the machine, or Smolitaire, which is the console's best suite of card games, or Soko, which is just a simple Sokoban implementation. Or
Sketch Share Solve.
Yeah, or Medial, or Sparrow Solitaire, or Sketch Share Solve. Like, I think Sparrow Solitaire is probably the best puzzle game on the machine. Like, it is available on the catalogue, despite being one of the more pricey offerings at $10, I think. As an effective time killer ever ready in your pocket, it's been priceless. It really was. Like, I mentioned it way, way back when I was moderating my GCSE exam. There was a lot of time I just had to sit in the room and look after the work, because the exam board believes that someone might come in and steal it or do it for the children when they're not present.
Make it better.
Yeah, but I was just sat there and thinking, well, I'll just do a few rounds of Sparrow Solitaire then if I've got half an hour. And I loved it.
Oh, I've got a really bad headache that's sort of coming on. Let's get through the shit. Okay, where are we?
Games you didn't play.
Yeah. Playdate, fantastic console. If you don't have one, get on the waiting list. Tell us how you enjoy it in 2027.
Yeah, it's worth the wait.
There must be some games, some 2023 releases that we still need to play. You've already mentioned Advance Wars 1 and 2. Yeah. I've still got a list. There's games that I've started, things like Xenoblade Chronicles 3. No, that was even last year. Fuck. Man. But yeah, I mean, that was on my list of games I need to play last year in the end of 2022 special. 2023 games still need to play. I've still got loads. Diablo 4 I need to finish.
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate 3 which has been, sort of lapping up a lot of Game of the Year awards. Ghost Runner 2, XO1 I need to finish. I've started playing that, and it's extraordinary. I need to finish playing that. I really want to play Alan Wake 2, but I also really want to play Alan Wake. So I've downloaded Alan Wake Remastered on my PS5. I've also got Mortal Kombat 1 that I've made a start on, which I always seem to find my way to playing the Mortal Kombat games, even though I don't like beat 'em up games.
Absolutely
I just love Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
They're a lot of fun. How about you? What apart from Tears of the Kingdom and Advance Wars, what else do you want to play?
The list is so
came out
big
this year?
Like, it's always big because outside of, I think, Zelda that I did play, I just didn't finish, Mario Wonder, and a few standout kind of big indie games like Cocoon, I didn't play anything that was particularly kind of like contemporaneous to this year. Bomb Rush Cyberpunk came out and it's like a spiritual successor to Jet Set Radio. And even though Jet Set Radio has never been my favourite extreme sports game, it's a Sega classic. A lot of people said, it's the most Dreamcast game of the year. And that made me sit up and go, I'll put it on the Steam wish list. And they just never got round to it.
Yeah.
I know I've got to play more Tears of the Kingdom. You've mentioned it so many times. I loved every minute that I did play of it. But I just fell off like I always do with big games. It's a wider problem I've had for years and years. That I get this very particular fear of missing out on other things. If I'm enjoying an experience that I know is going to take me a long time, another chunk of me is always going, well, I'm worried that a minute spent here is a minute not spent somewhere else. And it's like an eternal grass is greener thing. So, as much as I loved the 30, 40 hours I played of it, the weird rat part of my brain was constantly going, yeah, well, that's 30 or 40 hours you could have spent along amongst 100 other things. And I just don't know how to break that. The one I genuinely did want to play, but I'm holding out for a physical release in the new year, very crisp title, was Digital Eclipse's The Making of Karateka. And like the team
I saw
who
this
made
and
it,
got confused by what it was because it said The Making of Karateka. I don't know what Karateka is.
It's a good game. I played a remake of it a number of years ago on the Xbox 360. But Digital Eclipse are nowadays a team who have made a huge name for themselves as the de facto go-to teams for retro compilations and collections. Like they did the Cowabunga collection for Turtles. They did the Atari 50th anniversary collection the last couple of years alone. And Karateka is the game designed and developed by Jordan Mechner prior to Prince of Persia. So it's got a strong lineage. And they've basically, Digital Eclipse, been doubling down on their mission to make retro compilations to essentially be closer to playable digital coffee table books. So Atari 50, for example, has a wealth of supplementary materials and interviews and facts and documentary clips alongside a tremendous wealth of playable games. And they're all accessible through interactive timelines. So you can say, oh, well, that was happening in the world. And then this game released. And then this happened to Atari afterwards. And it's a really interesting way of being presented with old stuff. Because otherwise, if you're just dipping in and out of like a list of ROMs in an emulator, you don't have any context for what is happening around them. So, you might read a little segment about a particular game, watch a clip of the original developer talking about its genesis, and then one click later, you're having a go yourself and you get a proper feeling for what they were doing. Karateka represents a slightly different direction. Well, not completely different per se, but it's even more focused. So this lets you see almost every facet of the development of the 1984 game. It lets you play all the playable prototypes. It lets you see interviews, initial design documentation, just the works. And it's a game that I know Limited Run are doing a physical copy at some point next year. And to be honest, that's the only reason I've held off playing it to date, because I think I'd be all about seeing that kind of timeline of stuff and really getting a feel for how this is made and why it was the way it was at the time. So yeah, looking forward to obviously playing it eventually, but also seeing what Digital Eclipse do next. I think there's rumours at the moment that they're putting a collection together of Jeff Minter stuff. So that's like TXK that I have on my list, and Tempest, and all these kind of old arcade games and modern reworks of that kind of style. And I think that'd be a fantastic thing to kind of thumb through in a digital sense as well when that eventually comes out at some point in the future.
Before we award our official Game of the Year awards, which you've probably already guessed what they're going to be,
it's pretty easy.
Let's quickly look ahead to next year, 2024. What stuff are we looking forward to, and what stuff do we hope is going to happen? There's not that many things that are nailed on releases that I know are coming that I'm really looking forward to. Like Insomniac have said that their Wolverine game is going to be 2025. I'm always more than happy for games to take longer than I want, because they will be better. But we've apparently got the Elden Ring DLC coming in February. That's the current rumour in the rumour mill, but it will definitely be coming at some point next year, and I cannot wait. A game that I'm definitely looking forward to is Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. which is a fast-paced action Metroidvania set in the Prince of Persia world. It looks absolutely amazing. It's made by the team that made the Rayman Legends game and Rayman Origins, so it's got fantastic pedigree. I think it could be something really fantastic, and it's a January release. I'm also looking forward to the third part in the Cat Quest trilogy.
Yeah,
that you got me into. You bought it for me for Christmas about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah,
and Cat Quest 3, it's something like Pirates of the Caribbean or something.
They're
I don't know,
really pushing the
twist to it.
boundaries, aren't they? Pushing the boundaries of cat puns.
They're trying hard. They're trying hard. And hopefully, Fantasy Life I will be out next year.
Even a thing.
And
I forgot that was even a thing,
because they did a little coverage of it recently on like the latest like level 5 like is what's coming soon thing, and I started to get quite excited about it, which is good. What else? There's some more remakes coming out. Super Mario RPG is one I wouldn't mind playing at some point, but again, I've already played it, so not that bothered. Cut that. There's more Nintendo remakes coming. Mario versus Donkey Kong, which was a really good Game Boy Advance game.
Yeah, strange one.
And Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. Again, really good game. Neither game, I think, will really benefit from an HD paint job because they're very, like, I don't know, they're turn-based. They're quite turn-based games. They're not really. It's like Super Mario RPG. It's why I haven't like leapt at getting that because I don't think it's going to feel massively different to play, even though it will look nicer.
I suppose the benefit is just that it's more accessible. You know, more people can play it because not everyone has a GameCube knocking about or wants to mess around with emulation. For like Thousand Year Door or something like that. But
I don't think we're going to get Metroid Prime 4 ever.
No, I don't.
I don't know if Hollow Knight Silk Song is finally going to come out next year. It feels like it should, but then it also felt like it should come out last year. I don't know. How about you? What stuff is nailed on and coming out next year that you've got your eye on?
I'm quite keen to play a new Earth Defense Force. You know, it's a series I really like. It's really fascinating that it is now almost an annualized franchise. You know, once upon a time it was a bargain basement PS2 game. And these days, you get a new numbered entry most years. Like I can't claim to have kept up, but it's exciting to know that next year we're actually getting 2 EDF games. You've got the numbered sequel, Earth Defense Force 6, and then you've got the first sequel to the blocky voxel spin-off, Earth Defense Force World Brothers as well. So I'll probably play one of those in some capacity. There's a new Test Drive Unlimited game that I've recently heard about after playing the first one for a bit on the Steam Deck, just out of nowhere. That's quite exciting. You know, it's its first sequel in almost 15 years. It might be a game I pick up on the PS5, as I don't think it's going to run spectacularly well on the deck, but we'll see. It's being developed this time by a team called KT Racing, and not Eden Games, who did the original Duology back in the noughties and early 2010s. But it could be good. It could just be a Forza Horizon ripoff. Don't know, really. Luigi's Mansion 2 is another one getting a remake.
Yeah.
I don't really know what the point is. Like, if anything, I want to see Luigi's Mansion 3 backported to the 3DS. to make use of the stereoscopic screen. You know, where is my 3D Pocket Edition of Mansion 3? Bloody cowards. But seriously, it's a really good game. If more people get to experience it, 3D or otherwise, that is a net win. And the last thing, I was not even aware this was a game that was coming out, but you've mentioned it in our notes. There is a semi-sequel to Thumper called Thrasher that I've just been watching footage in the background, which is another VR first rhythm action thing. You know, Thumper they called rhythm violence. This looks like it could be basically down that same road. If it comes out for the PSVR 2, I'll buy a headset.
I know you will. That'll be the one that does it.
It really will, because Thumper is astonishing. And if this does half as much, it could be a great title. So we'll see on that one.
Yeah.
Thrasher.
Do you think we're going to get the Switch 2 next year? It seems all but confirmed.
Yeah, late holiday. I think if we do, it'll be kind of November time next year.
It's not going to release as an OLED, and that disappoints me.
Yeah.
There's no way it will. No way it will. And that's going to be. It's not going to change me buying one. It might mean that I play more of it docked than handheld.
We'll see.
Probably won't though. But you know, I hope that they. I just really hope they nail it. I really hope they nail it. I hope that it sort of simultaneously delivers what everyone's crying out for, which is like obviously a lot more sort of technical grunt,
Yeah.
but also doesn't ignore the fact that they're Nintendo and they're going to want to subvert something and go, you thought you would want this, but what about this? But not too much,
I,
because I don't really care about the fact that the controllers come off, or the
yeah.
fact that it's got gyroscopes, or the fact that I can put one of the controllers to my forehead and it knows what my heart rate is, or
Why not?
whatever.
It's the best feature. I
It's one
think
of them.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do in terms of backwards compatibility.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect a lot of people. You know, I've got a big physical Switch collection, but lots of people are not going to be bothered. It's just, you know, now there's two things under the TV if I want to play both. No big deal.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing that's going to stop this being a potential success is if they stick with the same cartridge format they've been using, they're always going to come up against storage constraints. And
Yeah.
if they want bigger games, if the idea is to have a more powerful console that can kind of better match current gen machines, it's not going to happen as long as we're limited to 32 gig cartridges. It just won't happen. So the only solution I can see is if they say there is a Switch cartridge spot, there is a Switch cartridge slot, and there's also a different type of media that is going to, you know, in the same way
like
that
they did with the DS.
Yeah, exactly, with the GBA slot. So they've got form, but it'll be interesting to see what actually happens there, because there's been such a big cottage industry around physical releases for the Switch. And I think a lot of people would feel quite burned if they suddenly couldn't access that library going forwards. I certainly would.
Yeah.
You know, I would deal with it, but I would be upset.
What is your biggest hope and wish for 2024 gaming wise?
If the Switch 2 came out and it had a Mario Odyssey successor, because
Super Mario Iliad,
as you have often called it, I think it should be, and I think that would make me feel good. You know, one of the last times I think there was only good in my whole mind was the kind of month I was playing Super Mario Odyssey. Anytime anything bad happened in the day, it was like, why would it matter?
Doesn't matter.
Because on the train home, I'm going to be playing Odyssey.
Yeah.
So if we can recapture that kind of halcyon time, it will automatically be one of the best gaming years of all time. So I'm holding out hope.
I really hope. I'm hoping for a surprise launch title for Switch 2, which is a brand new 2D Zelda game.
Oh, it's
which
not
I think
impossible.
is the only thing that could conceivably been developed alongside Tears of the Kingdom, because it requires such different, sort of setup in terms of dev teams, and also because I've been playing through A Link Between Worlds on 3DS, which is now 10 years old. I would love to see a third part in the Link to the Past trilogy released as a launch title on the Switch 2. It would be extraordinary.
Well, you heard it here first, listeners. Day
Game
one
of the year.
Oh, it's easy, isn't it? Even
Tears
the ones
of
I
the
didn't
Kingdom.
finish or play. Tears of the Kingdom by a country mile.
Best indie game.
You finished more stuff than me, but the way you spoke about Dave the Diver, I don't know if we can give it to anything else. It seems like it really did capture
It's so good.
So much of what I know I would enjoy. I just need to have the window of time to give it a blast.
It's amazing. Indie game of the year, Dave the Diver. Happy days. Best Playdate game.
It's a toughie. It's a toughie.
For me, it's definitely between Medial or Spyro Solitaire.
I
think
fully agree. And I feel
it's got to be Spyro Solitaire, hasn't it? It's extraordinary.
So. I think so. And if nothing else, because last year I mentioned Fish and Feathers being up in consideration, this is the game they made next. You know, the developer of that amazing high score arcade game made Spyro Solitaire. I love it even more. So it's nice to give the nod. It's a wonderful game. It is the Playdate game of the year. Good job, boys. Make some more great games.
So there we go. That is our end of 2023 special. We hope that you had a fantastic festive season. Hope you all had a lovely break, managed to play some games, managed to find some rest, relaxation, recuperation, and managed to spread love and kindness to your friends and family. We're going to be back next month with our third entry in our Around the World in 80 Games series. We're going to the Netherlands. It's going to be great. I cannot wait. In the meantime, do follow us on social media at O3C Games on everything. Go to o3c.games, where you can do loads of things. You can watch videos, you can listen to old episodes, you can read our articles, but you can also sign up to the newsletter and join the Discord. We'd very much love to see you on both of those things. The end.
We're just ending there.
Yeah, maybe. No, I don't know. I should say something.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year, everybody. And let's see what this year has in store. We top the league.
We are.